Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jack and Cole podcast. Today we're going to be talking about all the crazy stuff that's been going on. But first, I'm Jack.
And I'm Cole. What up?
So we've had a lot of crazy stuff happen recently with bands and new spoilers that have happened. But we also had a tournament this past couple weekends, and so at the last NRG in Madison, Wisconsin. I was able to take Goblins to a 5-3 finish, which was my dream. I really wanted to show in the middle of the Nadu meta, in the middle of the menace, that we were able to show that Goblins had some viability and we were able to get a little bit of success. Um, we lost round one to the person who ended up winning it. Shout out to Wesley, but it was a great time overall, and it was a lot of fun to be playing Modern. Modern's a great place right now, and you know, even before the ban, it was nice to see a good amount of variety. It wasn't all Nadu that I saw, but there was a definite dominant uh, percentage of the deck. Then also that weekend there was a team event. I was on Team Gummy, which was my buddy Alex, my buddy Brendan, and we were able to go 2-4. It wasn't as successful, but we had a great time. It was just fun to be playing Magic with my friends. Shout out to Kamari and and his team who ended up winning it. Being able to just go through and dominate with a bunch of really good decks. Team's a very interesting dynamic because you have to have three good players who know three different formats, and so it's a real show of skill to be able to take one down. But yeah, it was a great weekend, and then promptly afterwards, Monday, Cole, you can tell us about what happened.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I just want to say congratulations on the 5-3. Just an absolute banger of a showing. I feel like kind of a long time coming with the amount of effort that you put in with the deck. So, I mean, people look out. Jack's got the spicy tech. The deck is not a meme in the sense that just like every other creature combo deck, whenever you master it, you become really good at it and kind of like a force to be reckoned with. And this is an example of it. So, shout out to you. Great fucking job. But yeah, it kind of just leads us into, you played one of the last or the last weekend with Nadu Legal, announced on Monday. In the format, I guess we'll just be talking about mostly is Grief and Nadu being banned. Everyone, I think, it kind of expected Nadu to be banned. I don't think that there was really much, um, like aside from just a great sigh of relief, not really much to be said about that ban. Lots of great memes on Twitter, like it will forever live in infamy alongside other one green blue Simic cards, which is just kind of wild to me. But this is where we're at. Um, yeah, and also Grief being banned. I think that that was an interesting one. I think if you haven't watched Aspiring Spike's reaction to the ban, I would encourage you to do so. I think he talks really intelligently about kind of like a seeming like a crossing of wires in design philosophy. So I think it's important to like understand that and understand like catching WotC in their act of like using a certain design philosophy to ban one card, but maybe not to ban another in addition, or like to use a completely different design philosophy in different formats. And it's like I think that that's kind of an interesting conversation to have. So yeah, any other thoughts about like what do you think about Grief being banned? I want to kind of pick your brain. I know that that's like a card where a lot of people are saying that it's kind of like the lowest representation that it's had in a while. People are like not really complaining about Grief. So to have it be banned now, like how are you feeling about that?
I think in modern, it doesn't make a lot of sense that they banned grief. However, I think that because they watched the play, they had to finally admit that the play pattern in Legacy was degenerate and was absurd. If you watched Legacy gameplay at all, or if like I had friends and I play a little bit of Legacy, and I'm nowhere near as skilled as they are, but I had a friend, Devin Slater, who would play Rescam, and he went to a tournament and he won one of the promo Merc Tides because he was playing Scam, and he went like he said I don't think he said he dropped like 2 games in the entire thing, maybe less, but he didn't drop a single match. Like, and he just tore through the entire thing because being able to go pitch a grief, um, look at your hand, have Force of Will Days backup, play Underground Sea, reanimate my grief, have Force of Will Days backup,
Yeah.
and then you play Frog on top of it. Like your opponent's like, okay, well I have no cards left. You're gonna counter all the cards that I'm gonna cast. I'm gonna die to this grief. I'm gonna die to this frog.
Mm.
And so because they watched what it did in Legacy, and they're like, if they admit in Legacy, this is the thing that kind of doesn't make sense, right? Because if they're in one format, if they're like, well, grief is too busted because it takes the 2 best cards out of your hand at the beginning of the game, and it's bad play patterns because it starts the game. It's a non-game. It's makes games not feel like there's any chance. There's no agency in the game, and that's what they don't want. So if they admit that in Legacy, they had to admit that in Modern.
Mm.
The issue is the issue is people have been saying that in Modern for like a year now. And so like it's very like awkwardly timed, but I think that's why they ended up banning Grief is because in Legacy they were like, well, we have to ban it in Grief in we have to ban Grief in Legacy because everybody's complaining. But now that we're looking at it with this mindset, we're going to be called hypocrites if we don't ban it in Modern.
Mm.
So we also have to ban it in Modern. But we're looking at other cards, like you said, Grief is barely even played in Modern right now. But this might be a hint that there could be cards coming that could make it better or something. You never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know about you, but I'm definitely in the same boat of like I'm not sad to see Grief go in any capacity. I think it's a long time coming that Grief gets the ban. I'm definitely of the opinion that like I think Fury should have been banned too, so I'm not necessarily of like ban- I think Grief should have been banned when Fury was banned. I think both cards should have been banned at that time, just for quality of life improvements, and I think the format would have been way better for it. Um, it's just frustrating for it to be banned now with that knowledge of like, oh, if this is the way you feel about it, why was it here this whole time? Like, how did it take for it to be not a big player in the game for you to realize? And it just kind of like makes you feel those like kind of ugly feelings of like, are you doing this as like a corporate thing? Or now that the card is less in demand, now that we have MH3 in rotation, now that we're cycling out the MH2 cards, it makes more sense to ban Grief. So like, if they wanted to avoid all of that like tinfoil hat, like stressful stuff that they probably want to avoid in the first place, they just need more solid reasoning, and it needs to not be like huge egg on the face when they give it to us. Because like yeah that makes sense, but also like it's kind of dumb for you to say that now and not a year ago.
So it's really hard. It's really hard because you said the thing. You said the corporate greed thing. And they did print the altered art promos of Grief, Solitude, Endurance, Subtlety, and Fury in Modern Horizons 3.
True.
So they were allowing them to be like, oh look, buy your cards, buy your special promos, buy your foils, crack the boxes, let the whales do the thing.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, however many months we are after MH3, now they're like, okay, well it's fine if we ban Grief now because everybody spent their money on it and they bought it
Yeah.
when they could. So
Yeah. So no, definitely kind of an interesting dynamic. And a lot of people are saying the same thing about the One Ring, right? Where it's like if that's the philosophy that you're keeping Grief around for, why are we not banning the One Ring then? If we've not like already identified in several ban articles that chaining the One Rings is a miserable play experience, why are we keeping that around then? It also ties into that like weird, are you doing this for an alternative motive? Like we should know everyone should know by now that chaining the One Rings fucking sucks. Like no one actually likes that play experience, and I've heard a lot of people say that they don't like playing that play experience, that it feels very samey, and or it feels like you're just kind of like taking all the agency away from the game. And again, that's what WotC wants to avoid, apparently. Um,
yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
this is a crazy idea. So if you start the game with 7 cards, right, and your opponent has Grief Scam, You take your two best cards, you go down cards. They're technically up cards because their card quality is on average higher than the card quality they left you.
Mm.
If their opponent casts the One Ring, right, you're at 7, but they go up on cards. So is it like similar? Because you are going down on cards. It, when you're playing Grief, it's less good than the One Ring because you're not just netting the cards in the long run.
Yeah.
But in certain matchups, you don't need to go to like the late game. You just need to disrupt their combo enough or the way that they're trying to play the game and kill them in 3 or 4 turns with a grief attack.
Yeah.
Um, like if you're looking at it from like the axis of like 7 cards is how you start the game, right? Grief is like two Thoughtseize effects. So you put your opponent down on cards. The One Ring is you draw 1, 3, 5 or 1, 3, 6 cards, right?
Hmm.
Um, if you do that, you basically are like it's in a different direction, but the value you're gaining is almost proportionate. And if it distorts the game to a degree where people just don't want to play, right? If you go turn 1 grief, your opponent might concede. But if you go turn 4 ring, turn 5 ring, your opponent might concede too.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like it's not as degenerate as grief, but the
Yeah.
amount of times that you create non games might be similar, and that's something we can look that they might want to look at.
Yeah.
Or
No,
I'm
that's
just rambling.
no, that actually no, that's a great point. I think that I would add to that, like, and say that like they are both pretty degenerate. I agree with you that like Grief Scam specifically is degenerate. Like the fact that you get to, and with Ephemerate, it's also very good. But like with the Undying Evil effects, like bringing it back as a 4/3, double thought seizing, and getting a clock on them, like all of that is just so problematic. Um, I would say that they play different games too, where it's like Grief wants to play a small ball game. With Grief Scam, it's very low resource. The best part about obviously Grief Scam is like you could either turn one 4/3 menace double Thoughtseize, or you could turn one 4/4 double strike and just like be putting on an insane amount of pressure at a very like early point in the game, which kind of pushes you into that low resource, may I say, tempo strategy where you're playing efficient cards to disrupt their potentially more expensive cards. And like the One Ring is kind of on the opposite spectrum of that, right? Where it's like an expensive 4 mana play, but it just provides oodles and oodles of card advantage where it's like you basically time walk your opponent, you're basically drawing 3 cards before they can really do anything else. And sure, you take 1 damage from that, but it's like 4 mana, take a damage, draw 3 cards, and do the protection from everything clause. Like that's a very, very strong spell, but then it does more. It sticks around, and then you draw fucking 3 cards after that, and then you're up 6 cards, and it's like they both do
Yeah.
different things, but the way that they like create miserable play experiences, I feel like are the same. Um,
Very similar, yeah. Like, and
yeah,
also, like, how often is like one? So you're drawing that one extra card, and that could like time walk you, right? Because you're drawing an extra card,
yeah,
simulating a new turn. But how often is a Thoughtseize a time walk, right? You take their on curve play, and you just get an extra turn, and then you can play your land because they're gonna take their turn, play their land, and pass.
yep,
So like sometimes that double Thoughtseize is just double time walk. Sometimes 2 One Rings is just double time walk.
yeah.
You know.
So we're talking about the same. Like if that's the design philosophy, if you're not banning this card based on power level alone, if you're banning it based on that miserable play experience it's generating, then I think the One Ring is in that conversation. But I think we should stop rambling about modern bands. I think we should briefly touch on the Pioneer bands, where they banned Amalia, they banned Sorin, Imperious Bloodlord, um, but no ban of Treasure Cruise. Any quick thoughts on Pioneer bands?
I think the Amalia thing is smart because there were games where you would play like I was playing Slickshot and I played Monstrous Rage, and there were games against Amalia where if I felt like I was losing, I could just Monstrous Rage the Amalia, and it would go to a draw, and it would just be like, okay, wow, that's crazy, and I like so like draw a game, there's no way that I could technically lose, right? And in the mirror, I could totally see how you just stare at each other and like I think I saw there's some crazy things where there was like an insane number of draws because in the mirrors you would just end up drawing with each other because you're like, well, as soon as you go for it, I'm just gonna or like pump spell my thing. It's crazy. So Amalia being gone, definitely feel like that makes sense. The deck was, I don't want to say Splinter Twin, but you blow up the board and attack for 20 damage. That's pretty close to Splinter Twin. And then Soren, not much to say about Soren. Soren's a busted magic card and was fine until Vein Ripper showed up, and now it's not fine.
Yeah, putting
And
in Champing in a Dusk
Wizards.
was way worse than Vein Ripper, right?
I remember looking at the card and being like, okay, this is a deck. This is something we could try to play in Pioneer, and choosing not to do it. And I really wish that we had because card spiked. But rest in peace, Soren.
Yeah,
You just got out of the wall and now you're banned. So,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like not banning anything out of Arclight is interesting, but maybe we'll have some crazy stuff coming soon that will like shake up Pioneer. So
Mm.
we'll
Yeah,
see.
no,
We'll see.
we'll see. We'll see. I think not banning Treasure Cruise is wild. I mean, they've been really adamant about not banning Dig and Cruise as it being the like identity of the format. But I was listening to
It's in the
CCR.
paragraph.
Yeah, yeah. I was listening to the MTG Grindcast, and I think it was CCR that brought it up. Might have been Lee, where it's like since since Pioneer was conceived, we've had Consider be printed, we've had Sleight of Hand be printed, and we've had Picklock Prankster be printed. So basically, like the entire texture of that deck is new, and they didn't really. I don't feel like they didn't really know about that when making the card. I think Treasure Cruise is not okay. Like sorceries, if you're one mana drawing 3 cards and then bringing back 3 or 4 Arclight Phoenixes, like I don't know, it's a big no-no. I think that card should go, and not having it go means that there's gonna be a lot of Phoenix. People are just gonna play a lot of fucking Phoenix, and pretty much people are just gonna like stuff Phoenix down the throat of tournaments before WotC really realizes like this might have been a mistake, or they're just gonna say this is fine, and or they'll ban Arclight Phoenix itself, and that'll be really interesting.
Because traditionally, right, when there's a card and it's banned in Legacy and Modern, usually usually that card isn't legal in other formats, and they're like, oh, it's because there's no fetch lands, right?
Yeah, like
It's
once
like,
upon a
who
time,
cares?
right? It
Who
usually
cares
like
about
gets
fetch?
banned
Yeah,
down the pipeline. It usually like gets banned in
yeah.
standard and then gets banned in other formats.
Boom, boom, boom. But sometimes the Wizards is just like, nah, things are totally fine. How are you gonna put cards in the graveyard? And then the Arclight Phoenix player is like, yes. How are you gonna put cards in the graveyard?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. So that's interesting.
so,
And you touched on the legacy ban, Grief. They didn't ban Frog. It was just Grief, right?
no, the only ban in Legacy is Grief, and Legacy players rejoice. You can play whatever you want now. The one good thing about Grief though was that it was holding turn one combo decks in play. When Necrodominance was printed, they spiked mono Black Storm spiked to like like a percentage of the meta, but the dominance of Rescam was holding it down so much that it just the players who were trying to play it just quit, moved to a different deck that had a better Rescam matchup. So as soon as we get our first results from this ban in, I feel like decks that had a horrible grief matchup are just going to shoot right back up to the top. We're going to see a lot more scan or storm.
Mm.
We're going to see a lot more of just like really fast combo decks that were like struggling against grief, because a lot of times in legacy you have a lot of fast mana and you have like one or two payoffs because you need to win on turn one or turn two,
Yeah.
and so grief would literally just snipe the two good cards and you would be sitting there with like 5 mana and nothing to do,
Yeah.
and so you basically just concede.
Like I have a Lorien
So
revealed
now,
in my hand.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you're playing Beans Control, and
Yeah.
you're putting this interesting proposition when you're looking at a grief where traditionally as a control player you're not supposed to counter a discard spell, right? But if you don't want to get griefed, you can force of will, but then they have days and force of will. So so you're put in this position where you're like, okay, they counter your counter bet. They force you. They force your force.
Yeah.
Grief resolves. Take another card, reanimate it. Take another card, and so
I
the
think it's
decks
gonna
that
be
lose to that
like,
play pattern.
yeah. No, that's a really good point. I feel like it's gonna be like more like even though because you still have daze, force of will, force of negation, like you still have all those safety valves. But now you just don't have the fucking like double Dotsies bullshit. Reanimate can go back to being like just reanimate your street wraith, reanimate your fucking like you know troll of Khazad-dûm or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that's I'm sure
What's
that'll be fine. But yeah,
what's really crazy is right before the ban, the meta had evolved to a point where it was just scamless rescam. They had taken the grief and the reanimates out of the deck because in the mirror, it's better just to be playing blue black mid range control. So
yeah,
they
because
just took all the
you don't
griefs
want to catch
and
yourself with your
reanimates out.
pants down, right? You don't want to go like exhume my guy, reanimate, and then they're just gonna be like reanimate. And
Yes,
because
that is literally the thing.
yeah,
So they cut the griefs and the reanimates from their deck, and then they banned grief, and now those players are like, wow, nothing changes.
yeah, I feel like that
But
deck's still gonna be really good. Like just blue black frog.
Frog's really good.
Yeah, frog's gonna be good. And then I think that's it for bands, right? We touched on all those, so let's just go ahead and segue right
Yeah,
into
standard was good. Was good. Pioneer, just Amalia,
just Amalia and Sorin. I think that format
and
has
Sorin.
potential. I just really hope they
Now
ban
now
Treasure Cruise.
yeah, watch it going forward. But
Yeah.
spoilers for is it Duskmourn?
Duskmourn.
Duskmourn.
Man, is it early feeling for this? I don't know if anyone else feels that way. It's probably, I feel like it might have actually been a while since we've got any sort of spoilers, but I'm tuckered out. I just need, I need like one solid month of no spoilers.
Wizards,
Anyways,
can you give it to us?
we got spoilers, so let's talk about them. And honestly, I'm excited. Just like every spoiler season, I hear that it's announced. I'm exhausted, and then I see the cards, and my little spidey senses get going, and my little gears start working. Because that's the kind of person I am, you know, for better or for worse, and they know they've got their little feelers inside my brain. So
It's just nice to brew. It's nice to brew new cards. Sharing your screen.
I am sharing my screen. I am not sharing my screen on Discord. Let me do that.
Appreciate you.
Yep.
Sorry, as
Nope,
is.
we're all good. Um, okay, let's get right into it. First card I'm going to talk about is Split Up right here. This is a one white sorcery. You choose one, destroy all tapped creatures, or you destroy all untapped creatures. Pretty simple, pretty elegant. I think that this card is very good. All things considered, like you can play this in your Convoke deck, just like that one comment said down there. You tap out all your creatures, and then you just like Plague Wind them. You could also play it in Control. You can destroy all the tapped creatures. Card's really flexible. I imagine it's going to be at least a standard staple, probably a pioneer staple. Um, yeah, be on the lookout for Split Up. What's your next card, Jack?
Oh, I really like the card a lot. For me, I really like Razorkin Needlehead. Now, this card I'm gonna say is an Orcish Bowmaster, but it doesn't have flash and it doesn't make a body and it doesn't shoot any target. But it's a standard Orcish Bowmaster. You know, sometimes you just need to like punish your opponent for drawing a bunch of cards. Like your opponent keeps casting Divination and somehow they're winning. Play this card. It'll make sure that they they take a lot of damage, and it's a 2 mana 2/2. So worst case scenario, it just helps you be aggressive in the early game. Late game might jump in front of something massive, save you some life, and you know if even if it just deals them 2, 3, 4 damage over the course of 4 turns, right? 2 mana 4 damage, not including how much combat damage it does. That seems like a pretty decent rate. And then if you go to like older formats, right? If you're playing mono red burn or like a deck that doesn't want to splash for whether your mana base either can't afford to play shocks or mana fixing if you want to play mono red in either legacy or Modern specifically, I think this card is pretty good in a one ring meta. But
Mm.
I think this card is something to watch just to see how people want to use it. And it's an assassin. Maybe, assassin tribal is gonna be a thing. We just had Assassin's Creed, so we'll watch this one.
Yeah, and assassin is a important creature type for outlaws, so in standard that
Ooh.
potentially could be a thing. I know that mono red or red black deck in standard that like focuses on, is it Magda, the one that does things with assassins? Don't quote me on that, but this card's gonna be good. I think it's one of those cards where it's like I kind of have to see it in action to see how it plays. The fact that it doesn't have first strike on defense very clearly means they want you to be attacking with it. So I'm looking for ways to push through the damage. I'm looking for ways to pump the Razorkin Needlehead in combat, something like that. Because like they're like, I got my 4/5 Polukranos, and you've got your 2/2 Razorkin Needlehead. Either you lightning strike it, or you can pump it for 3 with like a monstrous rage. Both ways, you'll eat the 4/5 and keep your Razorkin Needlehead around. So it's like, as long as you're attacking with this card, it's probably going to be good. Probably even plays a little better than it looks in the less powered formats, is my assumption.
So I was just reading it again, and I just want to say this is half of a Shieldred. This
Yeah,
is half the mana for half of a Shieldred. It's just the one half. You don't gain any life. But if you have like a Mockingjay or something,
it's half
where
of the
like you're
one
able to
half of
just
the
like
Shieldred.
1/4 of a Shieldred.
Yeah.
But like if you're able to like Mockingjay like clone this, or
Mm,
like you're able to do something, maybe you sign in blood, not sign in blood specifically, but you make your opponent draw some cards. You
yep.
like do some weird burn stuff. But I think
Yep.
I'm a brewer like you, so I think we could do some cool stuff.
We could figure it out. I mean, if you have a deck full of this Bowmaster's Shieldred, and then like maybe you're wheeling your
Yeah,
opponent or something, like you can be killing them really
that seems
fast.
good.
So we'll come back to this card later. Definitely one of those cards that you want to keep in your arsenal, just kind of in any format, just to kind of like if you're getting railed by card draw, then this is a something you can play. Okay, moving right along. My next card is Fear of Missing Out. It's this guy right here. One in a red, 2/3 for an enchantment creature Nightmare. When it enters, discard a card, then draw a card, so you rummage. And then it has Delirium. Whenever Fear of Missing Out attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So I just wanted to highlight this card. It's an enchantment, so any potential enchantment themes coming out in Duskmourn, it works with that. It's also beastly bodied for a red creature. A 2 mana 2/3 is really beefy in terms of a red creature. I think like it's just good stats. And then you attack if you have Delirium. You give a creature an extra combat. Now that's probably less relevant in standard, but I'm thinking big. I'm thinking territorial Kabus. I'm thinking like big beefy beaters, the biggest guys that you can find. Really, all I'm thinking of right now is like Territorial Kavu and like Cyanide Draco potentially, but there's things out there. I'm
Yeah,
sure that there's better things than that I'm thinking of.
I
Um,
I agree. I agree 1,000%. I looked at this card and I immediately thought of Domain. It's like the hottest thing you can do with this, I think. If you're able to get a DRC and like somehow turn on your Delirium and
hmm,
have Domain at the same time, some stupid shit would happen.
Darcy plus this absolutely, and that's a 1 and 2 drop. So if you could, that's a legitimate play Darcy on 1, you play Fair missing out on 2, you rummage so you can maybe pitch your extra Leyline of the Guild Pact or whatever, and then
You put the bauble after the DRC. So then you have a card, you have
yep,
two cards in the
there you
graveyard.
go. You bobble, and then maybe turn
And you had a
three,
fetch.
you just like Malevolent Rumble or something else that like gets
Yeah.
all your stuff. Because honestly, it's kind of crazy how good Malevolent Rumble plays when I see Aspiring Spike play it, and how trash it actually reads. It's like, why is this card good? But
Yep,
anyway,
I
it's a
agree.
good card. I think watch out for sure. Because yeah, that simple, fear of missing out, DRC into fear of missing out. That's 8 damage on turn 2. So
Really good.
that's good. All right, what do you got for me next?
All right, so the second one I'm going to talk about is Hauntwood Shrieker. So this is a card that on the surface just looks like a 3 mana 3/3 that doesn't do anything, but when it attacks, you get to manifest dread, which means you look at the top two cards of your library, then you can put onto the battlefield face down one of them as a 2/2 creature, and the other one goes to your graveyard. You can turn it face up if it's a creature for its mana cost. So the reason I think that this card's pretty cool is it's a 3 mana 3/3 body's okay. That doesn't that's so so, right? But if you're able to somehow manipulate the top of your library, if you're able to like put either a card from your hand on top of your library or a card from your graveyard on top of your library, and then you're able to get an attack off, this is gonna do an Emperor of Bones impression where you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna throw this card into play. Don't worry about it. Pay some mana, flip it. Well, this is gonna matter now, not now that it's in play. And we have some pretty big fatties in the format. So I feel like it
Damn,
takes a
you
little
broke
bit of
it.
setup. I feel like this takes a little bit of setup, but this is like a pretty decent card if you're able to untap with it. Pretty busted if you give it haste, but for 5 mana, if you get to untap with this and you just attack, the card could be pretty busted.
Okay, you ready? So you play Hauntwood Shrieker on 3. Turn 4, all you have to do is have 3 swamps in play. You fetch a Witch's Cottage. Witch's Cottage
Ooh,
puts Grizzlebrand on top of your library. Attack, manifest dread, pay 2 mana, you have a Grizzlebrand in play. That's
that's pretty. It's pretty
now
damn. It's pretty damn good.
is it staying a 2/2? I don't think so, right? I,
No,
I
no,
don't
you
I
flip it face up. If you turn, when you turn something face up, it just becomes its self.
and you do it
You don't
anytime,
get
so they
ETBs,
can't interact with it once it resolves.
and it's the same object. So like if you like wait until your next turn to flip it, it can still attack as long as
Yo, that's
you turn
fucking good, bro.
it.
W. Okay.
Also, it's not just once per the 2 mana. It's not just once per turn,
Yeah, you just get to
right? You can
spam
only
it.
activate it once per turn. Yeah, you can just be like, I have 3/2/2s. I'm gonna turn all of my Eldrazi face up.
Oh, and that's important because on turn 4, you fetch that fourth land, you target it. If they go to kill it, you target it again. So you get two um, grabs at the goose, which is not a saying, but yeah, that's okay. Witch's Cottage. All you need to have is 3 swamps in play. Now that does mean you need to fetch 2 overgrown tombs or have the underground mortuaries. I don't feel like that's really asking that much, to be completely honest with you. Um, it is a deck building restriction, but yeah, that makes me
What's the
really, really
cheapest?
excited about that card.
What's the cheapest entomb that we have? We have Buried Alive.
We have
We
Unmarked
could just do
Grave.
Buried Alive.
Buried Alive does
Yeah, we could.
legendaries, but Unmarked Grave does non-legend. It's like Archon of Cruelty. Like that's a fine card to put into play. Let's move on. There's a card in here that we want to like I think talk about and then come
Oh
back
my
to Hauntwood
god.
Shrieker for sure. So yeah, definitely that card is great. My
We
next
yeah we can
card
leave that card. Go ahead.
is Demonic Council. I'm just actually gonna leave it here. So
Ooh.
Demonic Council. Shit. Hold on.
Sorry, children.
Demonic Council is 1 and a black for a sorcery. You can either search your library for a demon card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle, or if you have Delirium, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, instead you search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, and then you shuffle. This is important to talk about specifically for modern and older formats. Pioneer potentially could make this work. I'm sure that it's hard, way harder. Standard, good luck. I mean, if they have like a um, what's it called? There's like this. I'll just really briefly talk about this one here. Um, this like scrambling skull crab, where if like you have a ton of enchantments, maybe you're milling yourself a bunch. But for the most part, I feel like Delirium's going to be pretty hard to enable in standard. But it's a demonic tutor if you can have Delirium, and we know that demonic tutor is a strong card. That's all I have to say. Anything for you, Jack?
Chef's kiss. Let's see how fast we can break this. So if you play a gut shot, a fetch land, and a walking ballista on 0,
A
you have
bobble.
delirium on. Well, walking ballista, just those 3 cards you have delirium, And so like yeah, play trade Bauble for
Oh,
any
Walking
other
Bliss is
card.
a artifact creature. I see, I see, I see.
So yeah, you traditionally only need like three cards. Urza Saga is another one that has dual types. You only need like three cards to turn on your Delirium, and then you have access to a Demonic Tutor as early as turn two. You can grab literally anything you want. This is a card. Oh my god! So you can play this with Late Line of Anticipation, and you could play Necrodominance. That would allow you to tutor it like at your end step. You're able to go like pay a bunch of life, draw a bunch of cards, soul spike a bunch. If you have mana left over, you're able to like tutor for whatever you want, set up your draw, go to your end step. Like it just creates like so much redundancy in the decks that are able to play it. I
Yeah,
think that we we might see a lot of like creature decks, creature combo decks, splash this. I know that I might try a copy in Goblins, just one, uh, just to see, because like demonic tutor's really good. Like we have a lot of tutors already, but
yeah.
I think that being able to just like set stuff up would be super cool.
Yeah,
Um,
Delirium's easy to enable, so
Despite
it's like if you have just Delirium on, it is the best tutor that we have. Um,
straight
I'm
up,
I'm sure that there is like niche cases for like maybe you're playing elementals and you have a Risen Reef in play, then the one mana elemental tutor is better. But like without setup, or aside from like having Delirium enabled, um, then yeah, this is definitely the best one for sure. Okay,
this
what's your
is
next card?
this is literally going to make Storm like play black. You just play black and Storm, and you're just like,
For sure. And now you have
there's
Delirium,
like,
so you just play Spell Mastery with well, I guess no, that card's 5 mana. Don't play that card.
but your avenues in your Storm deck are no longer just is it. Now there's a reason to play black.
For sure, definitely, absolutely. All right, what's
All
your
right.
next one? Plow through these
So the next one that I'm going to talk about is just going to be a very straightforward card that everyone's seen by now, but we're just going to talk about it very briefly. The lead Elder Demon from the set, Valgavoth Terror Eater. It's a 9 mana 9/9 flying and lifelink ward, which there's no problem with ward, right? You have to sack 3 non-land permanents. That's pretty tough. As long as you don't have like a food or token deck, that's going to be a really high bar. So it's a 9 mana 9/9 flying lifelink with that ward. If a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And during your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valroth. If you cast a spell this way, you gain life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. So you have to pay life in order to cast the spells that are exiled with it. However, this is a Dothy Voidwalker basically that you don't have to sacrifice to cast the spells, and it's got lifelink. So you play it on one turn, go to your next turn. You play mono black, right? So you have a bunch of removal. You kill a couple of their things, attack. You gain 9 life. You pay the 9 life you gain to cast the spells that you killed. This is gonna take over the game very quickly as soon as it comes down. The issue is at 9 mana, what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I mean, I honestly like my initial impression of this card is it's going to be really, really good in Standard, potentially Pioneer, where the answers are less good than the threats. Where like Standard, Pioneer, are much more proactive formats, where the removal that you have is lacking. So Valgavoth, in this situation that we talked about with Hauntwood's Shrieker, um, is a great, amazing turn four play. Now that's more like something that's like Magical Christmas Land because you have to actually manifest dread into the Valgavoth. But I don't know, like that's where I envision the card, and like maybe you have some other backup where you have Reanimator or whatever. But like this card definitely does not read more powerful than Atraxa or more powerful than Grizzlebrand, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be more powerful. It's a different card though, so that's cool, and I appreciate it for being different. So yeah, I don't really have too much else other than being like this card's sick, and if you can ever bring it back a second time, any copy, after they sack 3 non-land permanents to it, I'm pretty my understanding is you just get to cast all those cards right away. So like that's going to be a
It's
very
pretty good.
upsetting line whenever you get to do that against your opponents. So yeah,
So I will say in modern, less exciting. In legacy, this is going to be a one-sided Leyline of the Void that you can Entomb reanimate in the Reanimator mirror.
yeah, it's pretty
Right?
dumb.
We don't have grief anymore. But if you're like, oh, I'm in the mirror, I don't want to grab Sire of Insanity or whatever. I want to just grab something that like gives me value. You grab this, you put it into play, and then your opponent has to deal with your 9/9. But it's not a Leyline of the Void. They can't just bounce it with Brazen Borrower because they have to sack 3 non-land permanents. So if you go Dark Ritual into Reanimate, right? You put this into play against if you're in the mirror, you're just gonna win.
Seems like
So
it. I mean, I
it
don't
re-
know what else they can do, like if they have like a vapor snag or like maybe
I
like
feel like, but,
a bone
but that targets
shards.
Cole. That
Oh
targets.
yeah, no, they're dead. Yeah, that's a great point.
It's so good. So it's gonna be interesting to see if it impacts legacy at all. Probably not good enough for modern standard. Probably gonna be dependent on reliant, how often people are able to get it in play.
So interesting. Good in standard, potentially pioneer, not really good in modern, but great in legacy is what I'm hearing. Interesting. Interesting
Yes.
where it lies, but that's cool. Awesome. All right, so next card for me is going to be Zimone, all questioning. She is a 1 blue green 1/1 that says at the beginning of your end step, if a land entered the battlefield under your control this turn, and you control a prime number of lands, you create Primo, the Indivisible, a legendary 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Then you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. They said there would be no math. They lied. Magic is all math. It gives you the reminders of what prime numbers are. That's awesome. Very nice. This card seems good to me. Like it's a 3 mana 1/1, so we're probably not going to see any play in modern. But in the non-Bowmasters formats, on turn 3, you play this, you make a 3/3. So it's already a Blade Splicer. And then if you ramp for 1, you create a 5/5, and all of a sudden it's just like, what the fuck? It just made 8 power. So it's like exponentially good. Um, oh, actually, it's a legendary, so it actually doesn't make multiple tokens. That's good to know. I misread that the first time. But still, it's making big beaters. And
Good catch. Good catch.
yeah, so you like attack with your 3/3, hopefully trade it off, and then make the 5/5 is kind of the game plan
There we
there
go.
then, or have a way to
Yeah.
sacrifice it. Um,
Maybe you're blocking or you're sacking it to your fountain port to draw cards in standard.
mhm. Yep, 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 yep. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this card.
I mean, I like it. I feel like in like frogs or like anything like that, where like they're gonna be ramping and they're gonna be doing like card advantage stuff. It's gonna fit right in. Just Blade Splicer in standard's always been really good, so we're gonna see how it shakes out. So the next card that we're gonna talk about is Dollmaster's Shop and Porcelain Gallery. So this involves the new room mechanic where there's going to be doors that you have to traverse. The best way that I'm going to look at these cards is I'm going to look at the top half as a card that is on the back side, and the bottom half is the card that you're trying to read and cast. So for Dollmaster's Shop Porcelain Gallery, the top half is 6 mana, and it's going to make creatures you control have power and toughness equal to the number of creatures that you control. So it just makes all your creatures as big as the board you have is. Now that can only be cast after you cast the base half, the Doll Maker Shop, 2 mana enchantment. Whenever one or more non-toy creatures you control attack a player, you make a 1/1 toy artifact creature token. So this is just trying to like shove you in a token direction. This card is not meant to be cast just as the base, but rather as you said, Cole, as a bigger spell for 8 mana over 2 turns. You're gonna be able to make all your tiny little rabbits, all your little 1/1s. They're gonna become giant scary dolls, and yeah, I think it's gonna take over some games. But the bottom half, not as exciting. The top half, Very good.
Agreed. I mean, like, Force of Virtue is pretty dang good, right? Because it makes a flash 2/2, and then afterward, like, it's 5 mana effect, end step, put a counter on all your creatures and untap them. Pretty good. It's also less mana, so you kind of have to, like, compare the two. But I like this card. You play this card on two, like, you play a 1-drop, you play this card on two, you attack, you make a 1/1. I can't really stress to you how good it is to have all of your creatures just kind of make a 1/1 when they, not all of them, but like every time you attack, you make a 1/1 along with your creatures. Like that's just a very good aggressive play. And then you can play the six mana spell. I kind of like thinking of this card as like flashback. Let me read the reminder text. It says you may cast either half. That door unlocks on the battlefield as a sorcery. You may pay the amount of, or I'm sorry, you may pay the mana cost of a locked door to unlock it. And this is a room. I guess the room has a door in the middle, right? Um, and so, or I guess the way that they worded it is a little bit
No,
strange with that.
that's right. So I was wrong. You don't have to pay 8 mana, but in my mind, you're usually gonna have two before six, and so you're usually gonna cast the 2 mana side before the 6 mana side.
Yeah, but you could do
However, it
either.
is good.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's very good to know.
Yeah, but like the fact that you can do either just makes the card even better. And the way the reminder text is worded, they are referencing two doors there, so I guess that's a little strange. But I'm not gonna try to dive too much deeper into that. Um, it's a cool card. It's a new mechanic. I kind of love the design space that they're exploring with enchantments. Sagas were cool. Classes are cool. Battles were meh. Rooms look cool. They look like kind of like aftermath cards that just stay in the battlefield. So I'm excited to see how this card plays out. It looks really good. Whenever
It,
you cast a 6 mana spell with like 3 or 4 creatures on the battlefield, your opponent's gonna die very quickly, very quickly. So
yeah, me I'm really excited to see how this goes. And of course, EDH busted. Not even gonna talk about.
yeah, no, definitely. Okay, my next card. Oh, I opened File Explorer. That's not good. Aha, I didn't open. Okay, my next card is. Yeah, let me just talk about this one. This one's neat. Winter, 1 black green or black red green for a 3/4 with ward 2. Beginning of your upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. Got Delirium as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Each opponent's max hand size is equal to 7 minus the number of those card types. So this card is not good, but it certainly is great in the sense that it's going to be really fun to try and play around in Constructed, um, as like not a very good card, but one that's like if you have your deck full of Razorkin Needleheads, Bowmasters, and
Yeah,
Shieldrids, you're really
yeah.
punishing them for drawing those cards, and the Delirium is like icing on the cake if you can get their max hand size down to like 1 or 2, then you can potentially be mitigating that like downside. Um, Especially if you can drop it early. Like if you can be ramping into this with Delirium and like they have a grip of 7 and then they draw 9 or whatever. It's like they have a bunch of options, but then they have to discard 5 cards down to 4 or down to 3. That seems pretty strong. Especially if you have like a Bowmasters in play or this Needlehead in play. So definitely a build around in Constructed. This card's gonna be fucking miserable to play against in Commander, I assume. People are already complaining about it on Twitter. So I would stay away from this as your commander, but you can do whatever the fuck you want in that format. Like rule zero it, you know. I love Jund and it looks fun to me, but like I understand people not wanting to discard down to lower hand sizes. So I digress.
Yeah. I love Jund too, Cole. You're the resident humans expert. Do you think that it's playable as a human?
God no.
Not
Mm-mm.
not even close.
Not in 100 years. I mean, it's just because like you can like I really do think you need to try and
You're
mitigate
right.
giving your opponent 2 cards on your upkeep. Like that's a lot of fucking cards, and like especially in a small ball, small like not small ball deck, but like the you're trying to be greater than the sum of your parts in humans, where it's like you're drawing like an Esper Sentinel and a Thalia's Lieutenant, which depending on the context of your board could be really good. But if your opponent's drawing Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, or like Wrath the
One ring.
Skies, One Ring, yeah, like you're really putting yourself in a bad situation. So I think the card's just kind of jank, but it looks fun.
Oh yeah.
That's all I got.
All right, so the next card that I'm thinking about is looking at Valga Valgavoth's Lair. It's the enchantment
Hmm.
land that enters tapped. So this is going to be something I think it's put specifically in the set to enhance Delirium. This is going to be something where if you can discard it, if you can mill it, if you can get it in the graveyard, it counts for 2 types. You just have to put a creature, an instant or a sorcery in the bin, right? And then you have your 4 types, and Delirium's turned on. Delirium seems to be a really important part of the set, so I'm interested to see how many like built-in safety valves are in the set. The big demon has a safety valve for Delirium, like hits your opponent's yard. However, I feel like there's not that much graveyard hate in this set so far, but I feel like we're probably gonna see. Ooh,
Okay, I was just double checking. This does put cards in your graveyard, and it's in standard.
yes. So there's a lot of ways to fill up your yard quickly, and I think the text on this card is less important than the card types, right?
That's a great
That's
point.
the main reason.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
kind
main
of a
reason.
medium player on the battlefield, right? Like maybe you're
Yeah,
playing like Amulet or something like, but even then, like you have way better options: Bounce Lands, Crumbling Vestige. Um,
yeah.
so definitely like you said, I think that's a really astute observation. You want to be milling this card, discarding it, 2 types in the land slot seems relatively good, and also really medium to play. So
I
for
think
sure.
I think the hexproof text is supposed to like draw you in and make you think really hard about how to make it good. When in reality, you're supposed to just ignore the card. And if you have to, you can draw it and play it as a land. But like you
Well,
don't really want to.
I think that honestly the hexproof text is there so that you're not like getting 1 mana Sinkhole on turn 1. Although I will say, pick your poison still turn 1 sinkholes you. If you go turn 1 Valgavoth's Lair, they go pick your poison, each opponent sacks an enchantment. And you're gonna be really, really sad if that happens. So just keep that in mind. Um,
Do not play it. Do
that
not
is
play it as your land.
yeah, that is the Urza Saga
Mill
tech.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, mill it and discard it. Mill it and discard it.
Yeah, so for sure, the card seems good. My next card's actually right on the screen. It's the Jolly Balloon Man. It is 1 red white for a 1/4 with haste. It's also a human, which is good, and it's a clown, which is like I think that might be one of the first times a clown's been coming in there. Anyway, it's got haste. You can pay 1 and tap it to create a token copy of another target creature you control, except it's a 1/1 red balloon creature in addition to its other colors and types. And it has flying and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. So you can't do this at instant speed. Doesn't have like the reflection tech. However, it's a 3 mana hasty like reflection to Kiki Jiki. That's a 1/4. Card seems good.
So you just like copy your best creature. Like worst case scenario, you copy your best creature, it becomes a 1/1 with flying and haste. So I guess in that scenario, you want something that has like an attack trigger. But if you like scroll up to all of the horrors in this set, right? Like all of like the white horror, for example, it's at the
Oh, it
top of the
it
white
dies
column.
into an enchantment.
I don't know if it dies to an enchantment, but
Oh,
like
this is
you
what I
just
was
get
thinking
to
of. You're talking about the
oh
nightmares. This guy.
yeah, that one. Yeah, so like it enters and
Oh,
it
it's not
attacks.
legendary. No. What does impending
so
4 do? 2 white white. If you cast
so
this spell for its impending cost, it enters with 4 time counters on it. Oh, so it's fading.
it,
Oh, it isn't a
so
creature until the last is removed. Beginning of your
but
end step. Oh,
if you cheat it in, right? If you just like cheat it in somehow and you copy it,
yeah.
like
Seems good.
maybe with that Hauntwood Shrieker card, you cheat it in and then You copy it with your Balloon
Mm,
Man.
there it is. We did it.
It's your Naya
Hauntwood
deck.
Shrieker just like holding all these jank piles together because it's so strong. This card's gonna be really fucking good. It's definitely like undercosted for a reason, or like underpowered for a reason in terms of being a 3/3, which is still pretty good. So yeah, I think Jolly Balloon Man. The art is horrifying. This card's super cool. I'm excited to put this in my Pyre of Humans deck. That's getting more and more into like I'm like getting to the point where I could
Oh,
maybe play Lutri at some point in that deck because there's so many one-ofs, but this card is I'm excited for this card, and I'm just a humans lover, so I'll be brewing with this, trying to do some stuff.
so you can Reflector Mage. You can Thalia's Lieutenant. You
Yeah,
can.
it's got all the good ETBs. Extraction Specialist. You can do Charming
Oof,
Prince
that's
to bounce and blink any of those ETB guys. So, and what's nice about humans is that you get to play Delny, which is a 3 mana Panharmonicon. The card's pretty underpowered on its own, but like yeah, 1 mana, 2 Reflector Mage triggers, Chef's Kiss, or like 1 mana, 2 Lieutenant triggers. It gets out of hand really quickly. So.
Soruto. What's it called?
Suruto Umezawa, the blue black 2/3. Now at this point your mana base is really bad. It's really you like have to play Ancient Ziggurat, but you have the lands to support it. Like if your deck is literally 4 Cavern, 4 Ancient Ziggurat, 4 Unclaimed Territory, uh 4 Secluded Courtyard, that's 16 lands. The deck typically only plays 18, so you can get away with playing like Secluded Courtyard because you have to play Satoru, but hey, you know what? y- No one ever said humans mana base is like great. So
Was good, yeah.
uh,
So yeah, I think the Balloon Man's gonna be cool. It's gonna be cool in standard, and it's gonna be cool to see how people play in other formats too.
yeah, awesome. You got
So
anything
I
else?
got I got another card. Undead Sprinter is right next to that one. So it's 2 mana for a 2/2. It's a zombie, which is a relevant creature type. You know, zombie's an important kindred type
Yeah.
in eternal formats. And then it's also got Trample and Haste, which 2 mana 2/2 Trample Haste, pretty good stat line. Might be good in an aggressive deck. It also has a line of text that I think is very powerful. You can cast this card from your graveyard if a non-zombie creature died this turn. If you do, it enters with a +1/+1 counter. So you would cast Undead Sprinter from your graveyard if a non-zombie creature died this turn. It's insane. You're basically able to have imagine a deck where you're trying to play an aggressive game plan. Your opponent's wasting their cut downs and their they go for the throats. They're good removal spells on your aggressive creatures. But then as long as you have other cards that aren't zombies and they're killing those too, or they're trading off in combat, you're able to always have this thing come back, and it gets bigger and bigger every time. Not each time, but it's always bigger than the time it died. So I think that this
Mm.
card, it may not look super oppressive right off the bat, but if you put it next to some cards that have to do with death synergies. If you put it next to some cards with sack outlets, right, you might be able to get some incidental value. Super excited to see what brews this card could do.
Hell yeah. Agreed. I think Undead Sprinter is going to be a sleeper. Notably, if your opponent's like sequencing their removal correctly, then you won't be able to cast Undead Sprinter, but they also need to be sorcery speed removing your threats, which is incidentally like just having a 2 mana card that's forcing your opponent to play at sorcery speed, or else you just get this 2 mana 3/3 trample haste back. That's good. Like that's you're basically doing like a Teferi time Raveler impression with your opponent's sorcery speed removal or instant speed removal, which they're casting at sorcery speed, and then you can take advantage of that with more hasty threats. So I think that this card's very good. It's also like you kind of unlock um, I don't know, Warren Soul Trader I think is legal in standard. No, that's a Modern Horizons card, never mind. But like if you had a free sack outlet, which there's a white black one that's a free sack outlet. I'm not gonna try and pronounce the name because I don't have the card in front of me. But like if you can just kind of like or like Cat Oven where you like sack a guy every turn, you can potentially use this either as sack fodder or get in, not worry about whether it dies. If it does, cool. Cat oven, bring my undead sprinter back. It's got trample haste. Did my guy not die? Cool, never mind. I'm not gonna do anything. But like, I don't know. The card seems pretty dang good. Um, pretty dang good. That's what I gotta say about it.
Some
So
power creep right there on that card. Some power creep. There's a 2 mana 2/2 with
yeah,
trample and haste, and you can cast from the graveyard.
yeah.
And when it comes back, you get a 1/1 counter.
Like I think this card's good with Bloodghast in the sense that it doesn't trigger off Bloodghast, but it accomplishes a similar game
Hmm.
plan where it's like in the older formats you have more free sack outlets. You have your Yawgmoths or your Warren Soul Traders or your Goblin Bombardments. Like you're already playing Mardu. I don't know if this card's good enough at all for Martyr Energy, but it's something to think about because it's like every single turn you can do that. Or if you're like you have a ton of mana, you're flooding out in Boros, you can just kind of go like Goblin Bombardment, sack my Undead Sprinter, sack my token, go ahead and like play my Undead Sprinter, and then I'll do it again. I'll sack another token, sack another guy, or I guess all you need is one non-zombie creature to die this turn, and if you have that happen, you can just sack Undead Sprinter and cast it as many times as you want, as long as you have the mana for it. So that
So is
seems
there a
potentially
way
good.
to like sack a creature to make a mana? Because if you were able to like
Phyrexian Altar, I
flip
don't think is legal in Modern. I think that's
modern,
Legacy.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think so either. But
Warren Soul
like, if there
Trader
was,
makes a treasure token.
that's fair. So if we were able to somehow net the same amount of mana, we could have infinite casts and infinite deaths. So like,
Hear me
we
out.
were able to like
Cryptolith Right.
do it.
Or
Okay.
does Paradise Mantle have is Paradise Mantle 0 mana?
Yeah.
Look that up. Paradise Mantle is probably a better idea. Dice.
Oh, that is so smart. That is so smart.
Is it? No, it's equip 1.
No. Oh, it's 0 to cast.
Yeah, it's here to cast. Never mind. Is you could it's like Cryptolith right? And then you have Warren Soul Trader and you have Blood Artists, um, and you have uh like whenever a creature dies you make a guy, um, or like whenever a creature enters you make a guy. I don't know what that would be. I don't know how that would happen. But you need 4 pieces and then you could that's
Deep
not good,
shit.
but that's definitely a combo.
You could do it. Yeah, because I'm thinking of like, yeah, we could brew all day, but this is something that I think is really interesting, and yeah, if you were able to like somehow give it a line of text like a cryptolith, right, and then you just like float it for mana, and then Warren Soul Trader,
It's too much.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Too many steps.
so many cards.
Yeah.
Do you have another card you want to talk about?
No, I think that's good. I think we can leave it there. These have been good spoilers.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I've been generally excited about these cards. I mean, none of them scream like extreme powerhouses to me, but that's okay. I kind of want them to be more subtle, and then the more that I think about them, the more that I feel like the cards are better. I mean, there's cards that we talked about here that are really, really good. I'm not going to go into those, but yeah, so that's exciting. Definitely let us know what you think in the comments. If you've got any qualms, quarrels, or questions, we'll be happy to engage. Otherwise, that's all I got.
Thank you guys for hanging out, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Hell yeah. Take care. Bye bye.